Is Aunt Becky really going to prison for 45 years? All right. For those who don't know, Aunt Becky is better known as Lori Loughlin. That's her real name. She was the much beloved and in her day quite lovely aunt on the show Full House, who was the girlfriend or wife? I think she was the girlfriend of, right? Wasn't the wife of John Stamos.
Eventually, she was the wife.
Yeah, eventually they got married, right. But originally Aunt Becky was the girlfriend of on the show Full House, which was just a beloved. I watched it growing up. I mean, I grew up watching Candace Cameron and what was the other one's name? I don't even remember now. Kirk Cameron, that's the right show, right? Or is that, yeah. No. Is Kirk Cameron Full House? No, I've got my shows. Whatever, doesn't matter. Who cares? He was on one of those shows where people are nice to each other, and there's like an intact family or close to it where people are being nice to each other.
You think of Bob Saget?
No, that's the dad. Yeah. No, I think he's in. I think he's the older brother. Anyway, neither here nor there. Full House, Aunt Becky. I had kind of a crush on Aunt Becky back in the day. She had great hair, which I respect. And here's the problem for Aunt Becky now, and her husband Massimo Giannulli, which is a great name for a fashion designer, which is what he is. Hey, Massimo. So they bribed some coaches at USC using this is all Operation Varsity Blues. Remember, this became a big story. I was like, oh my gosh. They bribed some coaches to say that their daughters were on the crew team. Their daughters were not on the crew team, or rather, they were crew recruits. And having been someone who actually rode crew in college, I can tell you that those girls were not on the crew team. Okay, just going to put that out there. I've seen photos. They're not. Ladies who row, you know they row. But I digress. So they bribed these coaches, and this is still a big story. Why is it a big story? Well, because they're facing now additional federal prosecution. They want to take it to a jury. They're going to fight this all the way. But if they get convicted, if Massimo and Aunt Becky get convicted on all, I'm going to keep calling her Aunt Becky because that's how I know of her, but that's Lori Loughlin, the actress. If they get convicted on all counts, they could get 45 years in federal prison. All right, 45 years. Now, the way the guidelines work, they wouldn't get 45 years, but I'm going to tell you something. If they take this to a jury and the jury says, sorry, you broke the law, and technically, even though the money laundering statutes you violated are meant to, go after drug kingpins and people doing really bad things, not people bribing their kids into college, you did break the law, and it is kind of what you did, and, that's kind of where it is. They could go to prison for a few years. I mean, I would not be surprised if Aunt Becky, I have to look at the specifics of the charges, but if she fights this and takes it to a jury, and they find them guilty on some of these counts, they're going to prison for a while. And remember, in a federal system, you serve the whole time. So whatever the judge says you get, that's what you get, and you serve it. There's no parole. I would note that Felicity Huffman from Desperate Housewives has already served her time. She got 14 days, but was released after 12 because there was a weekend or something. So she wasn't it wasn't exactly Shawshank. She was able to get out. It was okay. It wasn't that bad. It also reminds me of the Van Damme movie. I think it's Death Warrant, where they get this guy. Think about this. This is an idea. They send an undercover police officer into like the scariest prison ever to go after the guy who's the meanest, baddest, scariest guy in the prison as an inmate. I'm like, who would? But he does many good fly kick. He has many spinning kick, Van Damme. Yes. Who would sign up for that job? I got to tell you, I think that's a bit of a stretch. Producer Rizzuto, who's watching this, he's probably almost as much of a Van Damme aficionado as I am. So, anyway, we have where was I? We have Huffman, not Laughlin. Huffman has pleaded guilty. She got 12 days, but Lori Loughlin's taking this all the way. Now, why are the feds making such a big deal out of this? This is clearly federal overreach. I've been saying that from the beginning. Bribing your way into college, this should not even be a criminal offense. If it is a criminal offense, it should be you should pay a large fine. Remember, there's already been consequences for this. The daughters had to leave USC And no offense to USC, but it's not usually the kind of place you think of when people are bribing to get their kids in. I'm not trying to be school snobby here, but it's not Stanford. But anyway, they bribed their kids to get them into USC. I'm sorry, they bribed the coaches to get their kids into USC. But the kids have had to withdraw and obviously suffered some humiliation. Laughlin has already been cut from, I think, a Netflix series, as well as the Fuller House, which I've heard is terrible, which is the spin-off or addition to the original Full House. So there are bad things that have happened to these people already because of their decision to bribe these officials. And this is where I want to just point out that, unfortunately, envy is very powerful politics, and prosecutors are often politicians. And finding a very well-to-do, attractive, white female celebrity like this and making an example of her in this way in our current environment is attractive politics to a lot of people, particularly on the left. This is where the federal overreach component gets really scary when you see people that are being made an example of because of who they are, not what they did. We should all be worried about that. I can tell you from friends who have worked in U.S. attorneys' offices across the country, there is always there's a premium put on prosecutions of corruption of public officials, which I understand, keeping trust in the system or whatever. But, they sometimes, look what they did to Blagojevich. I mean, sometimes they go after these guys really, really aggressively because of it looks good, right? Politicians speaking truth to power. There's that speaking truth to power again. But also for white-collar crimes, there are people who believe that it is an issue of fairness that someone who is engaged in insider trading and makes $1 million illicitly should serve a really stiff prison sentence along the lines of somebody who went into a convenience store with a gun and stole $1,000. I think that's crazy, but there are people who will make that argument. There are people who will say that part of the racial injustice in our system is that there are certain crimes that are disproportionately committed by by people who are either, white or Asian, and that those crimes are more lightly punished, and there's a racial component to that. I mean, to that I just say, well, that's because stealing money through a stock fraud is far less of an imminent social harm and risk to life and limb than threatening somebody with a gun. I don't care what someone's skin color is. If they threaten somebody with a gun, that's a really serious crime. I don't care what someone's skin color is. If they are engaged in Medicare fraud, yeah, they should be punished, but I'm not worried the guy engaged in Medicare fraud is going to get out of prison and kill somebody, right? So there is this argument you'll see, especially for the criminal justice reform type. Some of them will say that we need to really punish. There's this impetus to really punish nonviolent crimes, especially if they affect the elites, right? So I think that there's some of that mentality at work here with, people cheating to get their kids into school. And, this, for me, also forces a whole discussion about, I think that the way that people get into school in a whole variety of contexts is really gross and bad and wrong. And now is where everyone starts booing me. I think that athletic recruiting for colleges overwhelmingly is strange and bizarre. I think that Title IX shouldn't exist the way that it does for women's and men's athletics teams, as though we're supposed to assume that women want to play sports at the same levels as men in schools, and we have to allocate funds the exact same way. I think that that's bizarre. I think it's wrong. I think that people getting into schools because their parents went there, legacy is a problem. It's just a financial issue because legacy donations are very important to these schools, but I think it's gross, I should say. I think affirmative action is wrong. I think it's discrimination by race, and if you want to stop discriminating by race, the best way to do it is to stop discriminating by race. So there's a lot of complexity in the college admissions world. And then there's also just the advancement office, right? Remember the way they described this in the initial Varsity Blues, which is what they call this whole college admissions thing. You can come in the front door, which is normal admissions. The back door is write a huge check. The side door is write a small check to somebody who can insert you in the process, coaches, etc., who can get you into the school in this way that is, not in keeping with the rules. I mean, to this I just say, so it's not a bribe that sends you to federal prison if you give it to the administrators, but it is a bribe that'll get you sent to federal prison if you give it to a coach. People could say, oh, but Buck, the admission spots are a thing of value, and that thing of value is to be allocated by the administration of the school, not by any individual coach. And to that I say, well, that's not even really true, because coaches do get to pick people as they see fit for their teams and get through the admission process. That's why they have the value they do. And so in what way is paying off a coach a federal crime? Gross, unseemly, sure. A federal crime? I spoke to some DOJ contacts when I was in D.C. when this case first broke, and they were like, yeah, this is way... Because remember, this is being handled by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles. Guess what? I'm sure there's a lot of libs. But they agreed. I mean, my friends in D.C. and the Department of Justice, they agreed that there's a lot of overreach, and there's kind of some headhunting going on here. I mean, there's some going for scalps. There's some trying to make a political point here about, privilege and wealth and access. We're going to really stick it to those people. 45 years in federal prison for Aunt Becky. I know it's not going to be, but the fact that she even faces that. I mean, when they look at the charges, it'll be enough to send her to prison for 45 years. Who was egregiously harmed in this process? Isn't it enough that that her daughters have been expelled, humiliated? She's lost a lot of money from her career. Have her do some. I mean, I agree with Bill McGurn of the Wall Street Journal. Have her do some community service, pay a pretty, hefty fine, and go about her life. You're going to send her to prison for this? This is insane. But, another part of this is that the incentive for the federal government to have you plead guilty is way too high. And they'd say, but you're getting a benefit. That's why you plead guilty, because you get the benefit. But our system shouldn't really be what it is right now, where it's you accept what the federal government says about you. By the way, this comes into play with General Flynn as well, where they forced a plea, I think, really illicitly by hiding things that were exculpatory, but they forced a plea, and now they say, sorry, you took the plea. It doesn't matter how we got you to take it. That's the position of the federal government with General Flynn right now. But it's not in the interest of justice to say, accept our allegation of guilt against you as true, and you'll live to fight another day. Fight against our allegation of you as truth, and we will annihilate your life and send you to prison for decades. That's not justice. I know it's the system we have right now, but that's not the same thing as justice. So, free Aunt Becky. That's what I say. Free Aunt Becky. And I guess Felicity Huffman's already out. I never watched Desperate Housewives, so I don't get as excited about that one. I can't really pretend that I care all that much. But I don't know, Aunt Becky. I grew up with Aunt Becky, man. Come on. All they need, though, is one. Maybe this is the game they're playing. Maybe this is all they need on that jury is one, millennial or Gen X or Y person, I guess that would be the right age, who grew up watching Full House, and Aunt Becky's going to walk. That's what I think the truth is. Would I send Aunt Becky to prison? Of course not. I'm not a monster.
One of the first they should not tell everything they're going to do. Like, if you're going to take people's guns away, wait till you get elected, then take the guns away. Don't tell them ahead of time.
If you're going to take their guns away, don't tell them ahead of time. You got to make sure you get elected, and then you can fool them. You can bamboozle them. Joy Behar. A woman makes millions of dollars doing TV, folks. I don't know what to say other than what a country we live in. Producer Mark, have I talked about how Beto's out of the race, by the way? Did I get to this at all? Oh, see, that's why I was thinking about this.
Because, I was just really feel like I was leaning into my Beto impersonation about how this country is so racist and so terrible. And I felt like I was getting Beto's cadence down, where he would just accept whatever you said about him and his privilege, and how he's super rich and white, and that's terrible, and he's really should be ashamed of it. And I was so excited. I was like, this guy's he's out. He bailed on Friday, man.
Beto is donezo. I didn't even get to talk about it because of the way he announced it over the weekend. I guess he was hoping people like me wouldn't spend a whole day just making fun of how terrible his campaign was. But there was something particularly, is hubristic a word? Let's assume it is because I want to say it. Full of hubris. I think hubristic should be a word if it's not. I'll do like the Bush thing, misunderestimate it. We'll make it up. But there was a lot of hubris coming from Beto O'Rourke all along. Not just the Vanity Fair cover. Based on what? Why was he on the cover of Vanity Fair? There was a hero worship of him from the left because he was willing to be the guy who was supposed to, take Texas from Ted Cruz and turn the state blue. The most expensive Senate race in terms of dollars in history. More money for Beto O'Rourke, the most expensive Senate campaign ever. He lost. And then they wanted him to be president of the United States. And this guy would go around saying,
yeah, I think we're just going to take your guns. And I just think that when the law changes, like, we'll take all of your guns. And if you don't like that, well, then, like, clearly you're, like, bad. And we're just going to take the guns anyway.
not understanding the constitutional as well as logistical hurdles of just seizing firearms from people because you have a really weak argument about how it will make them safer, but you're Beto O'Rourke and you are on the cover of Vanity Fair. But taking guns. And so that's what the Joy Behar there is a more savvy observer of politics than Beto is, because she at least understands that Beto's problem was that he started telling us what he really thinks. He was taking the most far left-wing position on issue after issue, but specifically on guns. He was saying what Democrats think to themselves but don't say aloud, not understanding that there's a reason they don't say that aloud. There are reasons why they don't just let it rip and tell Republicans what they're really planning to do in this whole process. So Beto is no longer running for president, which makes me a little bit sad. We've lost de Blasio. We've lost Beto. We're about to lose. I think we're about to lose. Did Castro already stop? I think he might have already stopped. If he hasn't, it's ridiculous that he hasn't. Tom Steyer's not going to stop because he's a billionaire, so he can just waste money on whatever he wants. He's wasting money annoying the American people with his climate change lunacy. Yeah, I'd say that there's some stuff here. There's some things to look at going forward about how it is that Democrats were even in any way at any point in time willing to get behind this guy Beto O'Rourke.
It's like, yeah, I agree. You should make me president because I just think that I'm terrible because I'm rich and I'm a white guy and I have so much privilege and I'm just drowning in my privilege all the time. But because I admit it, you should make me president.
Nope. Not going to happen, as Tucker calls him, Beto.
This is a president who is trying to divide us up based on the color of our skin, where we were born, our sexual orientation, or our religion.
Who is really doing the dividing in this country? Trump or the Democratic Party? I think it's an important question. I think it's something that we have to ask here. Who is really in charge of making sure that the American people do not unify around our shared Americanness? In fact, who has an entire ideology devoted to the study of oppression, not just between one dominant group and all the other groups, although that's certainly a part of it, but the oppression among oppressed groups? Intersectionality, which is central to the left's thesis of how America works these days. So I just want to know which side of the aisle is really obsessed with all this stuff. Who cares about identity politics? And by the way, producer Mark has told me that I cannot scratch my beard when I'm doing the show, which has become a habit of mine because you can actually hear it, it's like this rustling sound of manly beard being shifted around while deep and sonorous words are being spoken. Producer Mark's about to vomit. But the point here is that Bernie Sanders is talking about how Trump divides us all the time, and Trump is a racist. And I keep coming back to, I wish they would give me the examples of Trump being a racist. And I would also, that are real examples of him being a racist, not the lie about what he said. They lied about what he said at Charlottesville. They lied. And I even saw some, I remember, and I've not forgotten who they were. There were some conservatives who came after me because I was like, why are they all pretending like he said what he didn't say? Oh, Buck, are there good people on both sides? No, of course there aren't good people on both sides when you're talking about neo-Nazis on one side. Trump didn't say that. There's a transcript. A lot of focus on transcripts these days. There's a transcript, to be sure. But calling out the president for being racist, and yet here we have a president who has gotten criminal justice reform passed, which disproportionately has positive impact on minority, particularly Black and Latino communities. It gets no credit for whatsoever, none. A president of the United States who, I think that there's a certain respect that a lot, at least some of the minorities that I've talked to about their support for Trump, I can speak to that because I know I know a lot of minorities personally who are Trump supporters, whether they're Black, Asian, Latino, and they appreciate that when Trump speaks to those communities, he's speaking about how he wants prosperity for them, how he wants people in any community, including minority communities in this country, to be in the best spot possible to have the most prosperous future, make the most money, be the most successful they can be. I think there's a level of respect there. It's Democrats who often take this position of, well, we need a bigger welfare state. We need more government handouts for people. And if you oppose that, you must be racist. Well, what are the implications that the Democrats are making there? The Trump position, to me, seems to be to have a lot of faith in the Black and Latino and other minority communities in this country, that without the government in their way, without the government creating reverse incentives for them to do what is best for them to pursue their own dreams, that with the government out of the way and with lower taxes, with more jobs, those communities will thrive. Those communities will, the ingenuity and the skills and the intelligence and the work ethic within minority communities will be in even better position without the government doing this. So Trump's position is let us make it easier for minority communities across the country to become wealthier, more prosperous, have more, economic security and freedom. And the Democrat position to me always seems to be, well, we need more handouts. And if you oppose handouts, there's something, you're greedy and you're probably racist. So I talk to minorities who appreciate that Trump's position is that he speaks to minority communities as people that are striving for the same things as everybody else and have the same abilities and the same dreams and the same aspirations as everybody else, and is not pandering. Democrats, especially white liberal Democrats like Beto O'Rourke, all they do is pander. Constantly pander, constantly talking about how even if you were to look at specific troubled minority communities like the poor areas of Baltimore, like the south side of Chicago, I believe the west side actually has some violence too, but the south side of Chicago, and try to have a conversation about what could be done there to make those communities less, have less violence and be in better shape economically, instead of having that very worthwhile, sophisticated, and respectful discussion. The Beto O'Rourkes of the world just say it's because of systemic racism. That's why there's all this violence in Baltimore. It's because of systemic racism. And when you would point to other places, you'd say, well, why is it that there are other minority communities across the country where there's almost no violence? Is there not systemic racism there? Or can we look at specific communities and try to address criminal justice, law enforcement issues, economic issues, and do so on a plane of respect for everybody there? No, Democrats, as white liberal Democrats, have one move when it comes to talking to minority communities, at least when they're trying to get them to vote for them, and that is pandering. A lot of pandering. So I think it's, and by the way, Bernie Sanders' resonance with minority communities is a big question mark so far. Continues to be. Not as much as Pete Buttigieg, who, his African-American support, as I understand it, has almost zero in this primary. So it's interesting that Bernie Sanders he's probably trying to, establish some bona fides with the minority communities across the country by attacking Trump on this issue of race. But, Ilhan Omar, for example, also says that Trump he's the one who's dividing. He's the one who's separating us by race. Play 14, please.
The current occupant of the White House likes to talk about making America great. But every action and virtually every word out of his mouth is an attack on the very values and ideals that make this country a beacon of hope for me and the people around the world.
Every action Trump takes, she says, is an attack on the ideals of this country. Really? So if we had a real journalist in this country, they'd probably ask, okay, so was criminal justice reform meant to help the disproportionately incarcerated minority community? Was that an attack on our values? She says every action. I'm asking her based on the words that she uses here. So was that an attack on our values? Huh. Is always touting the black and Hispanic unemployment rate, which is at record lows, and the pride that President Trump has when he speaks of that issue, the sense of accomplishment and joy he has for those communities, is that antithetical to our... Because there's all these things that you could talk about with President Trump. You'd say, well, hold on a second. But she says that it's all against our values. She doesn't even pick issues here or there. Just like Bernie Sanders says he's dividing us by race. At what point is this not exaggeration or even overstatement? At what point is this just propaganda? Is this just lies? Lies meant not just to smear the president, but to smear any of his supporters, to make it seem socially, never mind politically, unpalatable, unacceptable to support this man. This is why they keep throwing out these allegations of racism. This is why they keep telling us that President Trump is more or less a white nationalist, because they're hoping that even though there's no basis for these charges, that there's no real way to prove any of this or even to make a fair-minded case about it, people will just hear the charge and be scared to support the man.
It's time for roll call.
Indeed, it is roll call time, everybody, which is exciting for all of us. We got a lot of stuff coming in here now, and let's see. Oh, wait, no. First, I got to go to Facebook because we got to load up the emails. I got to figure out how to do this a little bit better. All right. Inbox here, facebook.com/Buck Sexton to be in on the Facebook roll call. TeamBuck@iHeartMedia.com if you want to just send us thoughts elsewhere. Let's see. We have Tom who writes, "Hey, Buck, I was just listening to the podcast of yesterday's show and was surprised you missed an important key detail about the Fox News poll when you were reporting on it. Don't feel bad. Glenn and Rush also missed it. The poll is absolute garbage. To be more specific, the breakdown of the poll was 45% Democrat, 39% Republican, and 16% Independent. The breakdown for the country is 31% Democrat, 29% Republican, and 39% Independent. The pollsters oversampled Democrats by 6% over Republicans and by a whopping 14% over their average breakdown for the country. They also undersampled independents by an insanely huge amount. With this level of crappy polling, they can get any results they want. It's actually surprising they only got 49% to approve removing President Trump from office. This does not speak well for the Democrats, either with impeachment or next November. And yes, I intentionally did not capitalize Democrats. Take care, Tom." Yeah, Tom, well, you're crunching the numbers on this, but I kind of got there just by my gut. I got there just by figuring out that there's no way that what they are trying to tell us is true. And it's just not surprising that there's a lot of nonsense going on. Remember, polls are a way of shaping perception. And shaping perception, especially popularity on any specific issue, is a very powerful tool. So do we think that the people that are in positions to shape those things, are they angels beyond reproach, or do they sometimes maybe perhaps just a little bit decide that they're going to stack the deck for one side or another? I think we all know that. answer. Brian. Hold on a second. Buck, I've got a way of circumventing the attempts for Democrats to hide behind children and decorated veterans with bad arguments. Simply get the person you're speaking with to agree with the so-called protected person, then kindly inform them that your argument is now against their stance. The protected person is okay, this is kind of complicated. Also, to help you out, like soft butter and warm toast, time to spread some freedom coast to coast. The toast is the United States, and the butter is freedom. You spread that stuff everywhere. It's also a good analogy because your roll call participants are from everywhere. Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate you writing in, my man. It was great to get your stuff in the roll call here. Richard. Hi, Buck. Love your show. You explain everything and seem to analyze events the way that I would. Thank you for your service. I heard Don Jr. say Mitt Romney was his favorite Democrat. Ha ha. Richard, thanks for writing in, man. Thank you for your kind words. I think we'll have Don Jr. on the show sometime this week, so I've been in contact with him. It is very likely we'll have Mr. Don Jr. on, so there is that. We got Bradley. He writes, Buck, I'm a new listener. Yeah, someone told someone to listen to the show. See, it can happen. It can happen. It can be a day-to-day thing. People just say, oh, yeah, you hear about the Buck Sexton show? Oh, I love the Buck Sexton show. It's amazing. Oh, you listen to it? Yeah, you should listen to other people, but Buck's way funnier and smarter. That's all it takes. It's really easy. Just tell somebody, oh, where do you get it? Oh, iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. How do you find it? Oh, type in the Buck Sexton show. It'll come up. There's only one Buck Sexton who's doing a podcast right now, at least. So that's the good news. So anyway, Bradley, sorry, I got excited. I get excited about new podcast listeners. I love you old podcast listeners too. Don't worry. You guys are awesome. You guys are my fam. Hey, Buck, I'm a new listener. Oh, sorry, we already said that. And really enjoy what I'm hearing from you. You've become my primary podcast after only a couple of weeks. Yes. My question for you is, why is no one talking about the possibility of weaponizing a program like Medicare for All? I'm sure our voter registrations are accessible. Could you foresee a situation where registered Republicans are given lower priority to during rationed care? From behind enemy lines in California, Brad. I mean, Brad, never say never, but that does seem a little bit extreme to me. Medicare for All as a function of, there will be tiers within it, and there will definitely be rationing that occurs. And then how that rationing is doled out will become a fight for sure. And people will then be arguing with each other over the way the government deploys the resources that are made scarce by government intervention in the healthcare marketplace. But I don't think we're going to see anything with Republican registration used to deny people care. I can't say I see that being, because the good news is there's still a lot of Republicans, and they would be pretty upset, understandably, about that. So I don't think we need to worry about that one quite yet. Hold on. Wait a second. We got to go to, and that's when I have to take a moment here. Michael writes, can you tell me more about yourself? Where are you located? I'm located in New York City. So that's where I'm located. New York. Randy. Hold on a second here. Hey, Buck, love the show. Shields high. So Elizabeth Warren released the cost for her Medicare for All, no private medical insurance plan, and says she won't have to raise taxes in the middle class by 1 penny. She previously thought that her DNA test would show that she was 1,024th Native American, prove that she was part Cherokee. Since she has already proven that she has no concept of math, why would we believe her now? Just saying. Randy. Well, Randy, I agree with you on that, my man. She is not someone whose judgment I particularly respect or care to hear. Skip. My man Skip. The new Netflix The King was excellent. Brought tears watching the battle. Really? I might have to check that one out. You know what else I got to check out? This will be a little teaser for the show later this week, because I'm a former CIA analyst with a cooler name than Jack Ryan, Buck Sexton. The Jack Ryan show on Amazon, I'm hearing some troubling things, friends. I'm hearing that there's a bit of social justice nonsense going on. I'm hearing that they're rewriting stuff to appeal to the left-wing set in Hollywood. I don't like it. And I'm going to have to take it to task, I think, because CIA analysts should be depicted a certain way in the media, as people of above average reading ability who dress in semi-slovenly fashion, drink a lot of coffee, and go to a lot of meetings. So I'm going to make sure we keep it real with the CIA analysts. That's going to be it for today's show. We have a fantastic show coming your way tomorrow and every day this week, because you know how we roll. Shields high.